Hi, and welcome to RLM Herbal Ideals, where we take a holistic approach to optimal health. And welcome back. So, I am back home. The market was good. I got to talk to quite a few people, and I had a wonderful day, and I hope you did as well. So, I would like to first start off with my disclaimer. I am not a physician or anything of that nature. However, I do have a good knowledge base for the body and health promotion and health improvement, as well as how to help people take. I'm outside. I got a thing going here. I also have the ability to assist people with planning small changes in their life that can help them improve their health outcomes. So, again, this is June. It is Men's Health Month. So, I know I wanted to talk about some of the um, psychological issues that happen with men. But before I do that, so let me tell you what my plan is. So, I'm going to have this chat today, and then each week. So maybe next Saturday and the following Saturday, and then the following Saturday, I'll touch on some things that are the highest impact on men's health. So this is not only physical, it is also mental and emotional. So today I'm just going to do quite a light overview of what is, I have notes, so if you see me looking down, that's what I'm doing. I'd like to stay on topic. So what are the main concerns for men? A lot of these things are uh, that I'm going to briefly touch on are health issues. And then I will touch a little bit on some things that are not technically physiological health. Okay? So, the first thing I'd like to discuss is men and heart disease. So, there are several issues that affect men's health, and we, as their partners, need to address these in a way that is not condescending, but in a loving and caring nature so that the men will be receptive to it. Even if they push back at your first mention, I guarantee you they're thinking about it. Either they're thinking about it angrily, I don't know what he or she, I don't know what they're talking about. I feel fine. I just have. And that's what we want to get the process going with. I just have trouble sleeping. I just have some minor stomach issues. I just have to go use the bathroom frequently, and I just have, if we can get them to think about that I just have, in addition to the I feel fine, I just have, or I'm doing great, it's just that. So those are the things that we want to get them thinking about, because if we get them thinking about it, then that means they're going to think about the side effects or the signs that there may be something wrong and they may need to seek help of some type of interventionist, be it an herbalist or a conventional physician or primary care provider. These are the things that we want them to start thinking about. And quite honestly, there are some things that we as herbalists, we can address, but sometimes things will go beyond our means and the intervention needs to be faster than what our methods can do as far as healing the body. The hardest thing to do is to get people to change the behaviors that have been instilled in them for a long time. Sometimes it's generational, sometimes it's an issue from birth, and I'm not judging, but that first little French fry, that first thing of soda that's given to a baby, and they go, because one, it's sweet, and two, it burns. But I digress. So let's talk about the first one. The first one, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So there are 10 things I'm going to touch on for a little bit. And hopefully it promotes thought and action, because that's what the point is. We need some action on the activities that can help improve our lives. So the first thing we want to talk about is heart disease. The entire nation, and perhaps some parts of the industrialized world, have issues with heart disease. So that can be anything that contributes to or interferes with the function of the heart. So in the United States, there's like over 50%, I think it's like 51 plus percent of the men over 20 have a symptom or a sign or full-blown heart disease. Now, what can that be? So let's look at high blood pressure. That is the first one. Hypertension. This is just peach tea. Let's look at hypertension. What causes hypertension? The first and foremost thing is food that we eat. I would then say physical status. The third thing I would say would be genetics. Okay, so let's talk about the food we eat. If you are the partner, I want you to take the time, and as you prepare a meal or as you order out, the restaurants are now putting the calorie content and the nutritional breakdown on their websites. Take a look at those and see, one, how many calories are going into the food that meal is in total. Keep in mind the average US standard. I'm not going to say that it's the standard for everybody, because we're all individuals and we're all different. The standard recommendation for calorie intake is 2,000 calories. Sometimes a fast food meal will be over 1,200. And then if you start to look at the caloric intake and the breakdown of the reportable constituents, components, or ingredients of those foods, you can take a look at the high carbohydrates. You can take a look at the fats. You can take a look at the amount of protein that's in them, and then start looking a little bit further down and see how much triglycerides, whether it's trans. They will say no, but there is a standard on the amount of trans fatty acid, trans fat that's in a food, whether or not they can say zero or not. So there is a specific amount that can be stated. Now, the other thing you need to look at is the amount of sodium. There is sodium in almost everything. There's sodium, there's salt in hot cocoa. There's salt in cakes and pies. There's salt in our condiments. So ketchup has salt in it. And then let's say if you went someplace and you had some fries ordered, so they will put seasoning on the fries, that's more salt. And then you'll put ketchup on the fries, that's more salt. There's salt on the burgers, there's salt on the fish, there's salt in the batter, there's salt in the bread. So I think you're getting the point. We need to take note of our salt intake, our sodium intake. There are rare individuals out there who can have an extremely low sodium where they need that salt. But you do want to consider how much salt is in the food that you're eating. That is the main contributor to hypertension. And why? Because if you remember back in your high school science classes, they would talk about osmosis, right? the movement of water across a semi-permeable membrane. Now, if you are putting salt in your body, right, and the salt goes into solution and you have that sodium in your blood, okay, the water that's in your cells is going to move from where it is low concentration to high concentration. So sodium will pull the water out of your cells into your circulation. That increases the amount of fluid that's in your body. This is one of those situations where you can be drinking all the water in the world and still be dehydrated because of the amount of sodium that's in your body. It will pull the water from your cells into your blood, increasing your volume, causing stress on your heart, having to pump harder to move the higher volume, right? And then your kidneys have to pump harder to filter it. So now we're looking at an overworked heart and our overworked kidneys. Okay? So that is one of the reasons why salt is so dangerous. There are other things that you can do, but we can talk about that later to keep the flavor in your food without having the salt. And besides, if you cut down on it, you probably won't miss it anyway. And then when you do hit the salt, you go, "Ooh, this is salty," right? So let's talk about, so I mentioned salt. What's the other thing I mentioned? Right. Stress. So when we are stressed, we increase the amount of cortisol in our body, which pretty much does a similar thing. It ignites us on a hormonal level to make our blood pressure go up. And then again, we have the heart pumping harder, right? Under constant stress. And then the kidneys pumping harder to filter the blood. And again, you'll have the overworked heart and you'll have the overstressed kidneys. If your heart is keep doing this, so what happens when your heart is, what happens when you exercise a muscle a lot, right? It gets bigger. And then you'll have a condition, if this is chronic over a long period of time, you'll develop a condition. You can develop a condition called cardiomegaly, an enlarged heart. And that enlarged heart is less efficient. Think about a rubber band. When you've stretched it all, your heart's gotten bigger, and your muscles and the muscle tissue itself has gotten thinner, but it's gotten bigger because you're working it out and stretching it more. Then it doesn't work as efficiently. And then you don't move the fluid out your body as efficiently. And then you end up with fluid around your heart, fluid in your lower extremities, because that's where you see it the most, swelling in the ankles, swelling in the legs. It will seem like it could be a contributor to edema. Okay, so these are a lot of things. Like one little overuse of either salt or too much stress can cause these issues. And additionally, if you're under constant stress, and your heart is pumping the way it is, not all the blood vessels in your body can deal with that. So people with high blood pressure are more likely to have a stroke. I'll get to that later. Or an aneurysm. And then that also deals with another of the items I'm going to talk about later. All right. And then the last thing that I'm going to address is physical status. So again, too much salt, too much stress, too much cortisol causes weight gain. And currently our society is stuck in front of a computer, in front of a camera, or sitting at a desk, doing something. It's either your day job or your recreational activities, and we don't move anymore. Once upon a time, having a car was a luxury. It wasn't a necessity, it wasn't a requirement, because we took public transportation. right? So we took public transportation and we had to walk to the bus or we had to walk to the train. And it was several blocks. So at least we were walking. Now we go from our house down some stairs or from our apartment down some stairs, or if you do have stairs at all, out to a car. You hop in a car and you drive to work. So you've maybe taken 100 steps in the morning, and then no steps when you get to work, unless you were in a profession where it requires you to walk around a lot. So we don't get outside. We don't necessarily play because people are playing fantasy football, or they're doing something that is sedentary. I'm not saying that you need to go out and run a marathon, but try and work in your routine either before you go to work in the morning, if you're a morning person, or when you come in the afternoon, take a walk. The smallest walk you can do is around your block. And honestly, if you can't walk around your block at a decent pace without getting out of breath, you need some more work to do. Okay. A couple of weeks back, I did a video on some stretching. If you do go to walk and you haven't walked outside for a while, be sure to stretch before you walk and stretch after you walk. Okay. So for the most part, I'm going to be done with heart disease. The next thing I'm going to talk about is diabetes. So again, the main culprit with diabetes is how much of the food we eat and our physical status. There are two types of diabetes, type 1 and type 2. Type 1 is generally a malfunction of the pancreas. It either doesn't produce enough insulin or it stopped producing insulin altogether and you're insulin dependent. Now, type 2 diabetes is something that's developed over time usually, and it's mainly based on food intake. So we have to consider how much sugar that we eat or our partners eat. So with that sugar, it's not just table sugar. It's also starches. So people tend to say, if you want to lose weight, don't eat anything white. And that means no white bread, no sugar, no sucrose, table sugar, no cookies, candies, no baked goods, no rice, any kind, no breads, any kind. And that is a very restrictive diet. But you can replace those hard starches with other things. You can make your own bread at home and use non-wheat based flour or flours that are gluttonous, have gluten in them. You can have your starch, but you can reduce the amount of starch that you put on that plate. I used to be married and my ex-husband would have half a plate of rice, a quarter plate of vegetables, and a quarter plate of meat, because that was his culture, to eat a lot of rice. Eating a lot of rice like that goes back to oppression. Rice is not necessarily the indigenous food of all peoples, but it was an inexpensive way to feed the captives. It doesn't matter where you were. It's an inexpensive way to feed captives, as well as was grits. It was enough to give you energy, but it wasn't necessarily nutritional. Okay, so reduce the amount, because I don't believe in cutting anything out that is supposed to be food. But I do agree that you need to modify eating habits, and doing it one thing at a time can help you make a lifestyle change so that you don't have to progress further in your illness or dysfunction of the body, and give your body a chance to heal and restore itself if it is possible. It has happened. People have changed their lifestyle. They get up, they go walk, and walking is a good thing for people who have been diagnosed with diabetes, especially type 2 diabetes. Because when you walk, you're burning calories, and the calories that you're burning are generally glucose calories. Okay? Now, someone has asked me before, well, I don't eat sugar, I just eat bread. So here's an experiment. Take a piece of bread, or remember those saltine crackers? Take those, put it in your mouth, and just hold it. Chew on it, suck on it, and don't swallow. That starchy cracker or that starchy piece of bread will turn sweeter. I'm not going to say it's sweet like honey or sugar, but it will turn sweeter. And that's the amylase. That's what's in the enzyme in your mouth that has broken down some of the starch in that food, the cracker or the bread, and turned it into sugar. Starch breaks down into two sugars. One of them is glucose. That's the one we know, and that's the one that we measure in the body to determine if someone has an issue that can lead to or is diagnosed to be diabetes. So the one thing is reduce the amount of starch that's in your normal daily intake. Okay. Later on, I'll have, when I start talking about each body system, we'll talk about alternatives and other actions you can take for food. All right. So that is diabetes. So with diabetes, the first thing you need to do is cut back on those complex carbohydrates that are sugar producing. And then 2, get up and move. I think that was Michelle Obama that said, get up and move. We had to move. So get up and move. If you're just walk around the block, start with walking around the block. Just come outside, go straight around the block at your own pace. Once your body is used to walking around the block, then you can pick up your pace and walk around the block. Or you can do it slower. Once you're used to walking around the block and you can do it, not be overly fatigued, your feet don't hurt, your ankles don't hurt, your back doesn't hurt, your knees doesn't hurt, your hips don't hurt, your neck doesn't hurt, then walk around 2 blocks. You can go around your own block twice, or you can walk down 2, over 1, back up, and just keep increasing your walk. Once you're comfortable with that, pick up the pace. The average person walks about 2 miles an hour. I'm not an average person, but if you are average pace, you know, every smartphone has a health, or you can download a health app that counts your steps, and that's done by the phone jiggling. So just take it with you and do that. And once you've made your first lap, take a look at the step count and see how many steps that was. It will also show you the distance that you walked. It will show you how long it took you to walk that distance. And then it will also show you the calories burned. So what the action that you can take after that is looking at the speed you walked, the miles per hour, that's how it's calculated, and go up a half. So if you walk 2 miles per hour speed, then walk 2.5 miles an hour speed. And I'm saying take this slow. I don't expect anybody to get out there and just start running. Okay. I am a medical technologist, and I've heard some terrible things that have happened to people where they try to go too fast, too hard, too fast, you know, but take it slow. Get up and walk around the block. Go walk around the block twice. Then walk down 2 blocks, and so on and so forth. Getting up and walking will do wonders for you. You might even start losing weight just by walking. I walk. I haven't walked in about 2 months, but there's two reasons for that. I lost my walking buddy, and my knee hurts. So if I continue to walk on a bum knee, it's only going to damage it more. So I'm waiting for my knee to heal. Okay. And that's another thing. If you are injured, right, and you can't do the activity that you normally do, find an alternative. Okay. My alternative is Pilates. I have a Pilates machine that still gets the heart rate up. It still exercises the muscles. So when I'm ready to go walk again, I can go walk and there's no impact on my knees. So that's why I like Pilates so much. All right, the next item I'm going to discuss is a stroke. So there are major strokes, okay, where you have a full blockage in a blood vessel that is in the brain. If you have a blockage in your blood vessel that's in the heart, we call that a heart attack. If you have a blockage in a blood vessel that's in your lungs, we call it a pulmonary embolism, a PE. So if you have a stroke and you have a blockage, it can cause damage to the brain tissue. And that damage can be in any center of your body. Some people will lose the ability to function on one side. Some people will lose sight in an eye. Some people will lose the ability to move one side of their face. Some people have terrible, terrible strokes and they become quadriplegics. Some are in a comatose state, but they're breathing on their own. And then, some are just brain dead, unfortunately. And then those are the people that we lose. It's unfortunate, but we lose. So what causes stroke? Hypertension can cause a stroke because the blood vessels in your head can rupture from the extra high pressure. That's called an aneurysm, or it can cause some other constituent that's floating around in your blood to block up a blood vessel, and then you have a stroke. Now, there are signs of a stroke. So what you would look for is slurred speech, okay, numbness on one side, uh, their gait, a person's gait can change. You might see a droop, okay. So there are various types of strokes, and there are they call them mini strokes, and they're called TIAs, transient ischemic attacks. And basically, those are small strokes, but the vessels are smaller, and they can cause equally traumatic damage where a person will need to have occupational and physical therapy to work on getting their brain back to functioning better. I'm not going to say back to normal because, an injury is an injury, and it's not always the same, but we function better. Some people can get to 99%, but not 100% because there's just that one little thing that's still um, not repaired. Okay. So again, high blood pressure, stress. Sound familiar? Diet, cortisol. Okay. weak blood vessels, clogged arteries. So let's say if someone has coronary artery disease or atherosclerosis, where you have plaques building up in your body, sometimes they rupture those fatty deposits. Usually in people who have a high cholesterol, those fatty deposits will rupture and circulate in the blood. And again, they'll go to the brain, they can go to the heart, they can go to the lungs, they can go to a lower extremity. Okay. And again, strokes are nothing to deal with. So if you're talking to someone and they're sitting up and they're talking to you and suddenly they sound like they're doing gibberish, or this one side of the mouth doesn't seem to be working, but they don't realize it. And they'll say things that's totally incoherent. Or they can fall because they've lost their ability to balance. So stroke is another concern with men. All right, the next one I'm going to talk about is liver disease, and there are several issues with liver disease, and some of this is more of a societal issue than the men itself. Okay, so we can talk about alcohol, because this is one of the main things that can cause liver malfunction and damaging to the liver. So what does the liver do? The liver basically, all the blood in the body goes through the liver, the kidneys, and the spleen. Okay, so as the blood goes to the liver, the first thing it does is identify what is not self, what is toxic. And the liver tries to remove that from the blood. It absorbs it and turns it into something else that's usable, and then puts it back out into the bloodstream. Now, some people say no alcohol is best. Some people say a little alcohol is in moderation. And then there's the question of what people consider to be moderation. So we look at that. So what is that moderation? There are 1,000 studies on how much a person can drink in one sitting, or how much they should drink. And they generally say men can drink more than women because men have their body mass is different. They have an enzyme. There is an enzyme that's in the liver that helps the body break down alcohol into water and sugar. Here we are with the sugar again. Okay, so that takes a toll on the liver. So it can cause scarring. It can cause areas to deteriorate and become weak and possibly die. And this is called alcohol-induced liver disease, or alcoholic liver disease. And the liver and the lungs are two of the most incredible organs in our body because they do a lot of detoxifying. Okay, the liver has the ability, if the bombardment of the toxins are eliminated, meaning you stop drinking alcohol, the liver has the ability to slowly regenerate itself, with the old scar cells being sloughed off and removed by the body's immune system, and the liver begin to regenerate. I'm not going to say it's going to be perfect. No, because it's healing. It's repairing itself. No matter how much, let's say you have a car accident, and no matter how much they take things off and put it back together, it's not the same as it was in the beginning, but before the accident, but it does function. The function has improved remarkably. Okay? So we want to consider that about alcoholism. And there's another thing that is not common knowledge. If someone drinks, right, and they don't want to have a migraine in the morning, they'll pop some Tylenol. Don't do that. Don't do that. There's a reason why there is a dosage for Tylenol, and I should say Tylenol, acetaminophen. Sorry, didn't mean to disparage a brand, um, but acetaminophen does have toxicity to the liver. In the news several years back, I remember there being a community alert, so to speak, a public service announcement about people who were sick and self-treating them for the flu or something along those natures. And I don't mean this pandemic, way back before that. And then people were showing up again. I'm a lab tech. People were coming into the emergency room with liver failure. And it's because they overloaded their liver with the binge alcohol that they were drinking and then taking acetaminophen. And the two are not a good combination. It takes time for the liver to heal, but most people do get through it. This was also the case with people who were giving their children an over-the-counter cold and flu medication, not reading the package to identify that acetaminophen was already in it. And then on top of that, they would give them acetaminophen to help with their headache and or their fever. So the children were getting sick coming in because people didn't read the package to identify that there was already the recommended dose for children on the package, and that medication was already in the cold and flu formula. So be careful with that. I told my kids, and this is me telling my kids, because I had two boys, and one of them asked me, "Ma, I got a headache. Can you have some?" I'll say the generic acetaminophen. And I said, "For what?" He's like, "I got a headache. I'm hungover." I reached in my cabinet and I gave him 2 aspirin. And it worked better than acetaminophen. But that's something that we need to keep in consideration with the liver. Now, the other thing that too much alcohol can do is cause cirrhosis. Now, cirrhosis is basically scar tissue from the damage done by the toxins that have been consumed. Now, alcohol is not the only thing that can do that. If people are in environments where they're exposed to certain chemicals, those, whether it's inhaling or contaminated water or some other way of ingesting or absorbing chemicals through the skin and the inhalation, you can develop cirrhosis of the liver. Sometimes it comes from a virus. Okay, there are certain forms of hepatitis that can cause scarring of the liver. So people need to understand what the signs and symptoms are of hepatitis. The first thing you'll notice is some soreness or pain in your abdomen up where the liver is. Then there's the yellowing of the eyes as a telltale sign that you have a liver problem. The liver also helps process bilirubin, which comes from the breaking down of old blood vessels, and then you excrete it out in your bodily fluids, your wastes, okay? Bilirubin is why your urine is yellow and your stool is brown. It should be yellow various shades of that, but it should be yellow. Um, uh, that's how the bilirubin is removed from your system. Okay, you poop it out and you urinate it out. So there are various types of viral hepatitis. You have Hep A, that's usually foodborne. You have Hep B, which is generally contracted through mucosal membranes or blood fluid interactions. And then there's Hep C, where people are, that can be transmitted through mucous membranes. I'm trying to keep this rated G. And, but the thing about Hep C, these are the three common ones. There are more, but I'm not going to give you a science class. Hep C, people can have it and not know it until they get sick from something else, a cold or flu. Hep C is opportunistic. So you can have it, it can be dormant in your body. You get sick and immunocompromised, and suddenly it flares your liver up, you're jaundiced, and you're itchy. Okay? So those are some of the things that we can consider with liver disease. There are other considerations as well, such as liver cancer. I am not going to go into the medicine of developing liver cancer, because there are some people who don't smoke, don't drink, have never been exposed to toxins that can cause the mutations in cells, and they still develop liver cancer. So there are many, many causes for liver cancer. However, if your body is functioning properly, the body also has within the immune system, there are specialized cells that look for cells that have the potential to cause abnormal growths, and it knocks them out before. I mean, it's just sitting here and talking to you. These things are going all on in my body to help prevent me from getting sick. But if your immune system becomes compromised and it doesn't function like it should, because you're not getting the nutrition that you need, that can cause an issue, and it can lead to advanced chronic illness, and we don't want that. So I mentioned cancer. So for men, additionally, there's prostate cancer, which can be treated if caught early. And the thing is, it is a social norm because of what the side effects are. So partners, you need to make sure that the men in your life get checked for prostate cancer. And it could start with just having an enlarged prostate. An enlarged prostate is an inflamed prostate. An inflamed prostate is usually from something going on in the prostate, and it's trying to handle it on its own. So an enlarged prostate can be indicative of a situation. I'm not saying it's cancer. Sometimes the prostate is enlarged and there's no other reason for it but systemic inflammation. Okay, so there's prostate cancer, there's pancreatic cancer, there's testicular cancer. That's another one that has, a connotation for men, that one of the therapies for that, if it's not seeding, it's removing the testicles. And men don't want to have to go through that, right? So I've heard men say, I'd rather die of the cancer than to have my testicles removed, because they don't feel that they're any longer a man. You're more than your testicles, fellas. We, your partners, love you regardless. We, your partners, love you regardless, okay? Get your prostate checked. It's important. We want you around. Get your colon checked. I get it. I get it. I don't like a camera being driven up my rectum either, but they also have things like Cologuard. But if you have a family history of colorectal cancer, you might just have to bite the bullet and have that colonoscopy. It's better for them to identify polyps and remove them. Polyps can be precancerous. Okay, it's better that those are identified and removed before they progress even worse. Caught early, it's totally curable. Caught late, it's treatable. Okay, but we'll put it that way. Lung cancer. Lung cancer is a major one because we can't necessarily control what we breathe in, but we can control what we put in. So if you're a smoker, oh, wonderful little wasp. So if you're a smoker, you should quit. The number of chemicals that are toxic in a cigarette is unbelievable. Here's some homework. Go on the internet and conduct a search in your favorite browser and look for the toxins in cigarettes. Okay? There are mutagens, things that mutate your DNA. There are carcinogens, things that cause cancer. You don't want this happening from smoking. You're doing it to yourself. You're intoxicating yourself. You're introducing these things into your body that can cause illness. Okay? So the first and foremost thing is to stop smoking. Then there are issues where you're exposed to things in your places of employment. So in your places of employment, it's absolutely critical that you use any personal protective equipment that they provide and use it regularly. What that does is help reduce the likelihood that the chemicals or particles that you're exposed to will cause you harm. It reduces it. It doesn't eliminate it, but it does reduce it. The only thing that can eliminate it is if you find a new job, a new career, something that doesn't include exposure to those chemicals. In housing construction, there's asbestos. So we all have heard the commercials for mesothelioma. That is a real thing. Those asbestos fibers get in your lungs and they don't come out. They lodge in like a permanent splinter and they don't come out. So your body has a reaction to it. Some of them cause your cells to mutate. And then we have an issue with lung cancer. My grandfather died from lung cancer. He worked in the foundry, inhaling coal dust. He also worked in the mines down in Alabama. So he went from in the mines into the foundry, where he was shoveling the coal that he used to dig into the furnaces to make ironworks. And then way back then, everybody was smoking. So he used to smoke. He used to buy them cartons at a time. I remember I was a little kid. Baby, here's $1. Go on up there and get me a pack of cool longs. You can keep the change and buy whatever you want. I think they were like 50 cents a pack back then. Yeah, 50 cents. 10% of what they cost now. But, and that's another thing. Why smoke and it costs so much? Cigarettes cost more than a gallon of gas. That's insane. Quit smoking. You'll have other things to do with that money. Especially if you smoke a pack a day. Man, that's $35 a week. That's a lot of money. That's $140 a month. That's a bill for me. I don't know about you, but that's a bill for me. But these are some things that you want to think about with lung cancer. Okay, respiratory issues. So men do not like to go to the doctor. Okay, you can develop chronic obstructive pulmonary disease from those exposures, right? And it can cause a choking. The area, your lungs get inflamed and fluid builds up, and then it kind of crowds that heart, and then the heart has trouble pumping, and we know where that goes, right? Pneumonia. Men don't like going to the hospital. They can be out of breath. They could be sitting up at night because they can't sleep, because they lose their breath, right? We got to keep an eye on our partners. Pneumonia is fluid building up in your lungs from an irritation. Many times it can be a bacteria, it can be a virus. If it's bacteria, antibiotics are what normally knocks that out. If it's a virus, most of the time, the Tamiflu and all of that, the antivirals that they prescribe by a physician or that's available over the counter, those are the things that they give you to assist with those. But the problem is, we as a country have overprescribed antibiotics for the past 40 years, 30 or 40 years. Now the microbes that these bacteria, these antibiotics used to work on, they've mutated and they've become resistant. So we want to make sure that we nip these things in the bud. At the point where you start feeling sick, there are things you can do at home. Call your local herbalist and see if they have a regimen to help with a cold or the flu without using the prescription medications. And then if those things don't work, by all means, seek conventional medical help. All right? Sexually transmitted diseases. I'm just going to mention that and be done with it. Men can be prone to having more intimate partners than women. Many men do not like using prophylaxis. Prophylaxis can save your life. I understand that HIV infections are more controlled now, that they can get the viral load to undetectable limits, but it doesn't mean that it's not in your body. At a point where you might become immunocompromised, it may rear its ugly head again. Just like chickenpox and shingles. The virus that causes chickenpox is the same virus that causes shingles. So we want to, and then when you're immune compromised, either by stress or by illness, you develop shingles. That's the virus coming from the base of your spine and heading towards one of your nerve lines. And that can be serious. Some people will have a shingles infection in their eye, and that can cause blindness. Some people get it across their face, and it's very itchy and can be extremely painful. So prophylaxis is the key. Partners, especially if you're a new partner, you might want to consider maintaining prophylaxis for a period of time. That protects you and it protects your partner. All right. There are also unintentional injuries that happen to men. So let's take like a car accident. What can cause a car accident? And I'm not gonna just let this be only men, because there are some women out there with road rage. Road rage can cause accidents, and innocent people can get hurt. Um, Driving while intoxicated can cause accidents, and people can get hurt or lose their life. Falling, sports. I don't know if anyone has taken the time to go back, or maybe this you should. Um, some sports are outright dangerous, which is why they started doing the things they do for football players when they get tackled hard, when baseball players get hit with a ball that's gone. Darn it, mosquito got me. My torch went out. That's gone rogue and hit them in the head. But there's a movie that you should watch. It's a rendition of a real story. It's based on a true story. It's called Concussion. Excellent movie. Excellent movie. Whether or not you're a Will Smith fan or not, he did an excellent job on this movie. And it's about the football industry. It's a good movie. But the condition he named, that he identified, because the brain injuries in the sport of football can lead to long-term damage. And people they just started becoming violent, depressed, and then many of them took their own lives. Okay, so that is something that I think we should consider as an accidental injury. Um, yeah, that was a good movie. If you get a chance, you should see it. And then the last one we're going to talk about is depression, which kind of is um, into that, you know. So depression is one of those things that people will be more than happy to tell a woman, go see a therapist or go talk to somebody, a good friend or something along those lines. And women are more likely to do that. They're more likely to talk to a friend. They're more likely to seek psychiatric or psychological help to help deal with some of the stresses that women have, but we're talking about men right now. And there is a phobia about men going to see a therapist or seeking help, even if that help is their best friend. Somebody needs to talk to you about that, okay? Somebody. We've lost so many people to suicide because they just could not cope with the stresses of the societal norms of being a man, being the breadwinner, taking care of the household, defending the household, dealing with the stresses at work, worrying about finances, worrying about the kids, especially if you have sons in this world. It's not easy. If you have daughters in this world, with the examples of what a woman needs to do to get what she wants. You know, these are things that are really um, heavy on a man's mind, because he's concerned about his family. A man is concerned about his family, all of his children. So these are some main concerns that we have to look at and address when it comes to our men. Partners, talk to your relationship with your partner should be one of love, one of trust, not competition, not adversarial. It should be loving, not dominating, not abusive. No abuse verbally, emotionally, spiritually, or physically. None of that should be off limits to talk about, and talk about in a calm, loving way. So I hope that I have made some sense, and I hope that it gives you some thoughts and things to think about for your partners. And I hope that you continue to visit me here on YouTube and Facebook if we have that ability. So, with that, I want to say have a blessed rest of your weekend. Be well, and thank you for joining me at RLM Herbal Ideals, where we have where we take a holistic approach for optimal health. And if you saw me on Facebook, please follow me on YouTube. And if you saw me on YouTube, follow me on Facebook. Facebookers, you can also find me on Instagram. All right, wonderful people. Have a beautiful day and a lovely rest of your evening. Bye for now.